Welcome to my spoiler review for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. So if you haven't seen this movie, please do not watch this video unless you want the movie spoiled for you or you don't frankly care. Or just check out my spoiler free review on this channel, which you can watch without ruining the movie for yourself if you haven't seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of Shadows. So I guess let's get started. So overall, as I said in my spoiler free review, if you have watched that, this movie was entertaining thoroughly. I didn't feel like I was bored once watching this movie, and there was more positives obviously than negatives because I enjoyed the movie a lot. And let's get into them, I guess. So the obvious positive for me was personally Megan Fox as April O'Neil, as she was a very strong, intelligent woman in this movie and portrayed very well by Megan Fox. And I feel like they understood the April O'Neil character, where they didn't over sexualize her but used sexual content when needed, especially when she was undercover. She used her sexual female pheromones basically as a weapon to kind of get closer to Baxter Stockman, to hack into his emails, essentially to find out more information on his plan with Shredder and Timur, essentially. And she did that very well undercover and really hinted at Comic-Con and talked about Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter thrown in there, which is clearly a reference to the geekdom this movie is obviously selling itself to, and I feel like that was very nicely done and subtly done. And I feel like Megan Fox was great when she was undercover and really showed that strong badass she is as April O'Neil, and the character itself in this movie very well was literally the best part of the movie for personally in my opinion. You might not seem and think the same way as me, but I loved Megan Fox and adored her as April O'Neil. I'd love to see her again in the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie if there is one. We'll have to wait and see, of course, on the box office results of that. Then the next positive was Donatello, which I think is by far the best turtle and portrayed in this movie, and best adapted from the source material because he's intelligent, he looks like Donatello, moves like Donatello, and really comes across in the character development they give and more content they give to this particular turtle very well. And personally, Donatello has always been my favourite turtle watching the animated show in the 20th century. Therefore, I adored this in particular Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and clearly was the best and more understanding in how they portrayed him, where we knew what Donatello character was, and I felt like he had the most character development in the movie on a personal note, while the other turtles kind of lacked that personality. However, moving on to another turtle is Raphael, which I think was better portrayed in this movie, considering I didn't like Raphael in the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that came out in 2014. I felt like Raphael was more kind of closely connected to the source material in this movie, and they tried a lot to kind of get that Raphael that we love and know from the TV show into this movie, and it kind of worked, kind of didn't. He was that violent, brutal asshole which he is in the animated show, and it felt like that came across at times, while other times it felt maybe missed and hit and miss, and I felt like it didn't have enough development in the movie. It was kind of left out at certain points in the movie, which I felt like most of the turtles were, so he wasn't the only turtle that was left out. But overall, I felt Raphael was one of the better turtles. Not as good as Donatello, how he was portrayed, but pretty good in a sense. And then the next character I adored was Casey Jones, played by Stephen Amell, who's a newcomer to the Teenage Mutant Ninjas franchise because he wasn't in the 2014 movie. This being the sequel, I felt like Stephen Amell was portrayed very nicely and nicely done in capturing the Casey Jones from the animated show, but also the games, the comics and whatnot, or the source material, because he was crazy in the sense they adapted obviously who he was in the sense to fit with the whole story arc, but I felt like he came across as kind of at times crazy but still badass as the character is, and more like a brute, which is the Casey Jones character at heart, and that came across very well in this movie. Especially when it came to the fight scenes, I think his character was shown best with his quirky lines that the obviously screenwriters gave for Stephen Amell to act out, I think was very nicely done. And he was great in certain action scenes, such as the one where he was running away from Bebop or Rocksteady, and they were knocking the cars, and used his kind of smart intelligence, which he kind of was a new quality, I felt like, to the Casey Jones character. Worked well, even though Casey Jones is not known to be smart, but clearly he used his wit in this movie, and in particular that scene near the end of the movie when they're trying to take out Bebop and Rocksteady. And then Bebop and Rocksteady, I felt like, moving on anyway, were very good in the movie overall. Because I'm not a big fan of the really old animated show, I know the 20th century animated show, so I'm not too familiar with the characters Bebop and Rocksteady, but the origin at the start, where they basically are two knuckleheads that obviously were going to prison and being transferred with Shredder to a high secure prison. However, they become kind of minions of Shredder and then injected with this kind of ooze that kind of makes them Bebop and Rocksteady, basically a rhino, and in a sense a minotaur of some kind, or pig, a warthog, I think it's the right terminology for one of the characters. But I felt like their injection of humour and funness really kind of fitted with the tone of the whole movie being a fun, entertaining family movie, and I think that came across, and they helped elevate that tone throughout the movie, and were very good in being a great adversary for the Turtles to fight with. Certain fight scenes, in particular in Brazil, which were very nicely done in the water with the tank, were very greatly done, and I felt like that was a great adversary for the Turtles to fight, and it came across in this movie. And particular characters, not the smartest particular characters, but there never was, but I felt like they were great characters in this movie that really gave that fun factor to the movie itself overall. Then I can't obviously not talk about the action scenes in a positive note, because the action scenes were pretty incredible. With certain actions, as I mentioned, in the water in Brazil was a credible action scene. But also Megan Fox as April O'Neil had some great action scenes where she slided under the door to kind of escape Shredder's wrath when she stole the ooze. But also Casey Jones had a few good action scenes where he basically helped April O'Neil, played by Megan Fox, when she stole the ooze and was cornered by some foot soldiers. That was an amazing scene in my opinion. So many action scenes really stood out and were greatly directed. Obviously, being Michael Bay being the producer, we know he had a hand in the action scenes, and it came across in this movie. So now let's get into some of the negatives. So certain characters I felt like didn't stand out, and firstly that's Leonardo. I felt like he had little to do in this movie, considering he's supposed to be the leader of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I felt like he was, in a sense, kind of the character we wanted in the comics, but he didn't have anything to do, so it didn't really come across very well in this particular movie. I think it came better across in the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. So I wasn't sold on Leonardo character just because he didn't have enough to do in the movie itself, and not enough kind of, in a sense, dialogue that which, you know, kind of tempered that character overall and reduced that wow factor for that particular character in the movie, even though Leonardo's character wasn't badly portrayed in a sense, because it was the comic book character we want. It just didn't see enough of that, I felt like. And then we come to the other turtle, which I haven't mentioned, is Michelangelo, which I felt was an irritating turtle and got really annoying when he kept throwing joke after joke after joke, which kind of dimmed the movie down in a sense and was too childish in a sense. It came across with Michelangelo's jokes and irritableness that came across, in my personal opinion, and really irritated me when Michelangelo would just shout out a joke and act really stupid, which just came across awful across the movie. And I think he was the weakest turtle out of the four turtles, and badly portrayed in my sense how thick he is really, because he's not as thick in the original animated show as it is in this, in the sense, movie adaptation of the character. And then Shredder, I felt like, is another character that was underused just like Leonardo, and kind of wasted, even though they had a better suit, not that Transformers looking like suit in the first movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which came out in 2014. Felt like the suit was better, but he got captured by Krang and kind of put in hypersleep by Krang in this kind of trophy room. So I just felt like Shredder was very wasted and just stood around like, let's do this, and didn't do anything. So hopefully we see more Shredder in future sequels if they happen. But I felt like maybe the Shredder costume, I wanted to see more of him in action, because they got the Shredder costume right in this movie, which is one of the positive things. But also then we move on to another character that was in it and kind of was supposed to be the main villain, but his voice acting was very badly done, and that was Krang. And I felt like his voice was very whiny and childish like, which wasn't right for the character Krang, considering Krang is basically a pink kind of monster shoved into a humanoid robot, android robot. And I felt like that character came across as annoying at times and too cartoonish, which kind of downfalled the character overall. And that's my problem with the Krang character, but I'm sure we'll see him in future sequels because he survived at the end of the movie. But also then, the final negative note I want to mention is the movie felt overstuffed with too much going on with Shredder in it, Krang, Bebop and Rocksteady, Casey Jones. There was too much going on, and that came to head in particular in the final 20 to 30 minute action sequence at the end, where they're battling on Krang's ship he's trying to build and trying to stop Krang from building this ship, which could end the world itself. Therefore, I felt like that particular scene was rushed and very messy and sloppily done and forceful. And I feel like that kind of brought a downfall on the overall movie itself. But I really enjoyed the movie anyway, even with that downfall and with many of these negatives. But there's obviously more positives which kind of outweigh the negatives in my personal opinion. In particular, obviously, as I mentioned, Megan Fox, which I can't mention enough, which was awesome as April O'Neil she was. But overall, I felt like the movie was enjoyable enough, very entertaining. It may not be as good as the first movie, which I adored in 2014 and really surprised me in my expectations being not as high. But this movie was entertaining nonetheless, and I recommend you see this movie straight away at the cinemas when you get a chance, because you will be entertained from start to finish. And in particular, if you love the 90s cartoon of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or other adaptations in the 20th century animated show, comics, games, you will love this movie for some of the kind of notice and kind of, in a sense, loyalty to the source material that they give in this movie. I think it's very nicely done, and you'll enjoy it for that and kind of feel that nostalgic value if you love the old stuff of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. So I can't recommend this enough. You need to see it as soon as possible at the cinemas. And if you have seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of Shadows, please comment below on what you thought of the movie. And you can talk spoilers in this comment section, considering this is a spoiler review. Anyway, please click that subscribe button to support Nerd Source. And give this video a like if you genuinely like the video. Anyway, thanks for watching and goodbye for now.